All right, all right, all right. All right, let me have everyone's attention because this is a very special person who I'm about to introduce and someone who I think we need to really pay close attention to. It's my pleasure to introduce someone who is a good friend of America's mayors and the U.S. Conference of Mayors, Alejandro Mayorkas, Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security. He recently met with conference leaders shortly after taking office and was with us at our leadership meeting in Dayton, and he's also here today. Secretary Mayorkas is the first Latino Cuban. I gotta represent my people here. Thank you. Yeah, that's all right. He too likes Cuban coffee. An immigrant confirmed to serve as Secretary of Homeland Security. He has led a distinguished 30-year career as a law enforcement official and as a nationally recognized lawyer in the private sector. Secretary Mayorkas and his department are responsible for many of our most pressing issues, responding to the influx of migration across the southern border, overseeing the resettlement of Afghan evacuees in our country, fixing our broken immigration system, responding to and recovering from hurricanes, floods, and other disasters, protecting us from terrorism, foreign and domestic, and helping us to avoid and recover from cyber attacks, including malware attacks that interrupt vital services, compromise our security, and cost billions of dollars. Woo! That's a lot of responsibility. Please join me in welcoming our friend, Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here with the Conference of Mayors. You know, several weeks ago, following a devastating tornado, I visited the city of Mayfield, Kentucky, a very proud city that was once also a city of schools, churches, stores, places where community members could assemble. And when I visited it several weeks ago following the tornado, the community members were there, but really nothing else was. The schools, the churches, the places of assembly, the stores were gone, just literally blown away and blown down. And the question arose, what was it that kept the people together? What was it that allowed them to remember the pride they felt in the city that but a day ago was standing and vibrant, and to draw upon that pride? And it really wasn't a what, it was a who. It was the mayor of Mayfield, Kathy Onen, and her ability to comfort her constituents, her community members, her ability to reassure them, and her ability to work to ensure that the things they needed, the supplies and the services they needed, were delivered to them. The mayor, all of you mayors, are some of the most powerful people in this entire country. You have under your charge the well-being of our communities. And your power is increased when you partner with others. And we in the Department of Homeland Security want to be a very valuable partner of yours. Many mayors around the country and many people whom you represent and lead don't really know what the Department of Homeland Security is. Most likely uppermost in their minds right now is immigration, but they may not realize that the United States Coast Guard, the United States Secret Service, FEMA, the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, TSA, and other agencies and offices within our purview are actually part of the Department of Homeland Security. I certainly don't have enough time to speak about the breadth of the work that we perform and all for which we are responsible, but I do want to focus a few remarks on 4 areas where we are deeply involved and want to be deeply involved with you. We want to be your partner, And when I first started in this job, I communicated that we are a department of partnership. I want to thank Mayor Suarez for his kind introduction. He is the mayor of a city that was my first home when my family arrived here in the United States from Cuba. On this day, this first-year anniversary of the Biden-Harris administration, the 4 areas that I want to focus on, that we have been working so hard to partner with leaders across the country, are cybersecurity, domestic violent extremism, immigration, and natural disasters. And let me start with cybersecurity. There may be some of you who feel that your city is immune from a cybersecurity attack, that you're really off the radar screen and perhaps too small to be victimized. There may be others of you who lead very large cities with very sophisticated cybersecurity architectures that might find a great deal of comfort in the architectures that you have built and consider yourselves immune from attack because of them. And I would respectfully submit that you would both be wrong. You know, over the past several months, we've seen a hospital in a small town in the United States be the victim of a ransomware attack, and its patients in the intensive care unit having to be moved on an emergency basis to another hospital in a neighboring city because its systems and processes were shut down. We certainly have seen the large city victimized by very sophisticated actors, and sometimes it doesn't take a great deal of sophistication to successfully launch a cybersecurity attack. It could be one of your city employees actually just clicking on a link that they think they recognize, but is not exactly what it should be, and all of a sudden, the bad actor is inside. What can we do about it? I would say regardless of the size and sophistication of your infrastructure, you really need to identify a person who could take charge of the cybersecurity portfolio, because it is something that we all need to be vigilant about. And then there's the blocking and the tackling that actually can make a real difference. It is, in fact, instructing your personnel, and not only your personnel, but your community members, to change their passwords from time to time, to make their passwords strong, to back up their systems, some of these very easy things. Because in the cybersecurity world, in a world where we are all connected, it only takes one computer, and we say that we're only as strong as our weakest link. And then what can we, as a Department of Homeland Security, do for you? This is the first year that we will have $1 billion in grant funds to distribute around the country to different cities, small, medium, and large, over a 4-year period. And this year, it is our plan to distribute $200 million of those funds to cities. And so we have a great deal of funding to equip and empower you to deal with this threat environment that is only growing. And I would ask you to really look on our website at the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, or CISA, as it is known, because everything in the federal government has an acronym. And we will make those grant funds available to you, and we can also dispatch our expert personnel to you wherever you are in the United States to really help you build the architecture that addresses whatever funding limitations you have and whatever potential we can help you realize. The threat landscape is only becoming that much more challenging. Let me then turn to what I have described as the greatest terrorism-related threat that we face on our homeland today, and that is the threat of domestic violent extremism. And just to be able, just to make sure that I define it accurately for you, we are not speaking of individuals who espouse ideologies of hate. or who propel false narratives forward. We in this country, of course, one of our fundamental principles is the principle of freedom of speech guaranteed by our United States Constitution. But where we become involved and where the threat materializes is when those ideologies of hate, those false narratives are linked to acts of terrorism. Everyone here is assuredly aware of the slogan, if you see something, say something. And that, I think, when that is articulated, we think of the airport, we think of the transit station, we think of the backpack that is left by a bus stop, perhaps by someone who wishes to do us harm, and we're very concerned about the contents of the backpack. But the world of domestic violent extremism is different. We're not talking about the backpack as much. We're talking about the individual. And the issue is not the identification of the backpack, but the ability to identify when an individual who might overtly be articulating ideologies of concern or false narratives, when we begin to see them display a tendency to be driving towards violence, when we see them descending in perhaps mental health, in an adverse mental health condition, when they begin to exhibit antisocial behavior. You know, there was a case but a couple months ago when tragically an individual who heroically served in our armed forces, who was suffering post-traumatic stress disorder, was beginning to exhibit signs of antisocial behavior and descending into more severe drug abuse. And people around him and close to him who loved him noticed it, but they didn't know necessarily what to do about it. And this veteran, to whom we owe so much, went into a home, allegedly, and shot and killed 4 individuals. But what can we do? What can we place in the hands of his loved ones, his friends, his pastor, his neighbor, to be able to detect when, in fact, he began to exhibit signs of trouble? Who would they be able to call, and what would we be able to do? And here, too, we in the Department of Homeland Security can help you. We can dispatch our experts to teach you about the indicia of violent extremism and when one is beginning to descend into those paths. We have grant funds. Last year, a minimum of $77 million, but we have more this year to equip and empower you to build programs and to be able to deliver the social services capabilities that you might have. Our goal is to prevent the threat from materializing, not responding with the tools of accountability in the enforcement arena that we can bring to bear. Of course, we will do so if we're unable to prevent that threat from materializing, but it is our goal to be preventive before we have to be responsive. We have so much that we can offer you in that area as well. In the world of immigration, I couldn't help but notice that Mayor Suarez mentioned the situation at the southern border as one of our initial responsibilities here in the Department of Homeland Security, and of course, that is of primary focus. But I want to speak about something more, something different. On September 30th of this past year, September 30th, 2021, I issued new immigration enforcement guidelines. And in those guidelines, I articulated what I felt was a very important principle, that we will not dedicate our limited enforcement resources to apprehend individuals who have been here in this country for many years, who've been contributing members of our communities. Unlawful presence in the United States will alone not be a basis for an immigration enforcement action, but rather we will allocate our efforts, we will allocate our resources on those individuals who present a current public safety threat, a threat to national security, or a threat to our border security. And that is a very important principle. And it is not just a matter of the appropriate allocation of limited resources, but it is a matter of justice and fairness and equity as well. And so I have an ask of you. Some of your cities, by reason of past history, have declined to cooperate with immigration authorities in the apprehension and removal of individuals, even if those individuals pose a public safety threat. And I do not mean to suggest that distrust, if that is one of the concerns underlying a policy such as that, I don't mean to assert that that distrust is not earned. But what I want to communicate to you is that the Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE, the agency of today and what it is focused upon and what it is doing, is not the agency of the past. We are not engaged in indiscriminate enforcement, but we are focused on making our communities safe and allowing those who have been contributors to it and productive members of it to allow them to continue in their contributions and their productivity. And so I will be coming to you and asking you to reconsider your position of non-cooperation and see how we can work together. And I may not succeed initially in a wholesale reversal of your position, but I am willing to work in increments with you because the public safety, the public's well-being for which we are all charged is, I think, at issue. Lastly, let me speak of natural disasters and the reality that climate change has changed the landscape so significantly. You know, when I was a deputy secretary in the Obama-Biden administration, we spoke of seasons. It was hurricane season. It was fire season. We don't speak about seasons anymore across the country as we look at natural disasters, whether they be tornadoes, hurricanes, fires, devastating fire in the beautiful state of Colorado, but a short while ago. The Federal Emergency Management Administration, FEMA, which is part of our Department of Homeland Security, again, can do so much. You know, when I visited Mayfield and other parts of Kentucky, I visited twice, the second time with our president, we saw parts of buildings that were actually built to relatively modern codes that were intended to be safe zones within a building should a natural disaster strike, and they were destroyed by a remarkably powerful tornado. And so one of the things that, of course, we are doing in partnership with state, local, tribal, territorial communities is looking at building codes and whether, in fact, they are evolving to meet the threats of today rather than the threats of yesterday. And so let us join you in that analysis. Let us help you map out evacuation routes in case a natural disaster hits. We want to help plan to prevent devastation to your populations from occurring, to be ready for the disasters should they strike, to be able to respond effectively, and to be resilient against them. We want to build with you, together with you in partnership, stronger and more prosperous communities. We want to prevent the threats from materializing. If they materialize, we want to be able to respond effectively, and when we respond effectively, we want to prove our resilience. That is what we want to do. And we also want, with you, to champion our identity as a country. We want to champion our identity as a nation of immigrants, realize and harness and advance their contributions. That is who I think we are, and I, as an immigrant to this country, say that with tremendous pride and gratitude, not only to my parents, of course, but to the country that gave us this home and me the opportunity to join government service. And let me end on Operation Allies Welcome. In late August of 2021, we began the parole of Afghan nationals, many of whom stood side by side with us in the theater of war across the world. Today, we have resettled over 70,000 of them. And when I say we, I use that advisedly in the most inclusive sense. It's very difficult now as we look at the national landscape to really take stock of the incredible divisiveness that we are suffering in our society. And it is breathtaking in a world of increasing divide to see a force of unity. And Operation Allies Welcome presented that because it crossed party lines. It bridged the divide. Cities and leaders of different policy backgrounds and different political beliefs came together and demonstrated what America always has been and what it always hopefully will be, and certainly what it can be, the greatest place of refuge in the world, a haven for those in need of relief, and especially for those who have given so much to us. And so for that, and for so much more, I thank you, and I very much look forward to partnering with you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Secretary Mayorkas, for your thoughtful remarks. It is clear that America's mayors have a good friend at the helm of the Homeland Security Department. It is now my pleasure to introduce to you one of the newer mayors in our ranks, the 110th mayor of New York City. Yeah. Some call it the Big Apple. I call it a suburb of Miami. I've gotten to know Mayor Adams over the last couple of months, and many of you know that he and I are big believers in crypto and the power of innovation to improve our cities. And he was so inspired, and we were both so inspired, that I took my paycheck completely in Bitcoin last fall. So he replied to me on Twitter that day, and I shared my news and announced that he would like to take his first 3 paychecks as mayor in Bitcoin. I love that kind of spirit. It makes all of our cities stronger. And the difference is that I have an outside job. He doesn't. So I don't know what he's doing exactly, how he's paying for his bills, but we're going to be talking about that in April. With his incredible background as New York City police captain, state senator, and borough president, Eric has shown that he's willing to push the envelope, innovate, and lead. It's my pleasure to introduce someone who is a dear friend, a genuine person, incredibly humble, incredibly talented, the mayor of New York, Mr. Eric Adams.
Thank you so much. And I want to thank my good friend, Mayor Suarez, and thank this entire conference and walking through the building, interacting with many of you it has been a breath of fresh air. If I were to say a city that is dealing with crime, a city that's dealing with housing, a city that's dealing with problems of violence, a city that's dealing with economic recovery, you will have a difficult time saying which city I'm talking about, because that's all of us. We are in this together. I know that, and you know that. I've only been mayor of New York City for a few weeks, but I want you to know that I appreciate the support and solidarity you have shown me. There's a lot of experience in this room, and I'm proud to be among you, listening to you, learning from you. As mayors from all over this great nation, there's nothing more important than for us to be working to solve problems, deliver services, and produce results for our people. Because with so much dysfunction in Washington and division in our nation, now is time for the mayors to lead America. Over the last 2 years, we have seen exactly how important this urban civic leadership is to the entire country. When COVID first appeared, every mayor could see this wasn't a problem that was going to be solved on an individual level, but it also wasn't going to be addressed on a federal level. We needed to think globally and act locally, as the saying goes. And we were going to have to do it fast. The pandemic shows us that we didn't have a lot of space for political debates and ideological rhetoric. We were going to have to make decisions in real time. What we needed was to be radically practical. Radically practical. But to make these decisions and put them into play, we also needed leadership. And you, my fellow mayors, provided that leadership when we needed it the most. Thanks to you, the 80% of Americans who lived in cities got the guidance they needed to protect each other from the spread of COVID. And during the worst months of the crisis, we were able to keep our cities going because our municipal workforce, our essential workers, stepped up and kept up. And when the vaccine became available, you made sure that your city workforce was marshaled to distribute that life-saving miracle shot to everyone who wanted it. Thanks to you, our cities kept on functioning, and America was shown a path to recovery. But inaction by our federal government now darkens that path at a critical moment. The COVID crisis exposed problems that have been with us for far too long. People are ready to rebuild, but we can't just go back to the way things were done. We can't keep governing from crisis to crisis. We have to look at the rot that was exposed at the foundation of our society. We can't just put drywall over it and pretend we didn't see it. And we must acknowledge these truths and speak clearly to our citizens. We can't pretend our working class people are getting a fair shake and a fair wage when going to life without that. We can't pretend that our streets and subways are safe when people can see that guns and violence are killing people every day. We have to stop that. Yesterday, an 11-month-old baby in New York City was shot. We can't pretend our kids are getting an equality education when so many have fallen behind. In New York City, 65% of Black and brown children never reach proficiency every year with a $38 billion budget. We're going to have to change the way we educate, and our kids receive the support that they need, and our teachers. But mayors know, you can't just say it, you have to do it, because the people know you are in charge. They know who is responsible, and they know where to find us. So we're going to do these things and be radically practical. That's our job as mayor. as leaders, but we're going to need some help. Now I know there are many in Washington who are fighting hard for us. They want real change too. I'm proud of the New York City delegation. They are warriors. They don't come out to play, they come out to fight. Everyone here in Washington knows that. But while our partners are leading the change for justice and progress on a nation level, we mayors are going to have to keep moving ahead on the local level. And we're going to need to set an example for the federal level. We have to be willing to try new things, big things, and implement those plans with precision. We have to turn innovative ideas into serious action with quantifiable results. Today, I'm calling for a new national urban agenda that follows these principles and gets stuff done, as we like to say in New York. First, we need to treat the cancer of violence that is holding our cities back. To do that, we need greater coordination with the FBI, ATF, and state law enforcement. We said after the 9/11 attack, we would never allow information sharing to prevent us from stopping that attack. We see terror every day in the inner cities. That same coordination that stopped planes from flying in our buildings must be used to stop bullets from carving highways of death in our country, particularly in Black and brown and poorer communities. Let's show that same energy. We will also need more funding for violence interrupters programs that address the root causes of crime. That means more resources for skill training, job placement, and youth mentoring. You can't have a country where it's predicted that 30% of the men and women in jail are dyslexic and 55% of the prisoners in Rikers Island have learning disabilities. If you don't educate, you will incarcerate, and we have placed too many young people on a pathway of incarceration instead of education. Next, we need dollars for child care. Any working class or low-income parent who cannot work because they cannot find affordable child care would be trapped in a negative economic cycle forever, particularly women. If you want to uplift women, let them have quality child care for their babies to do so. With the child care initiative put forward by the White House and majorities in both houses of Congress, we can free them from that cycle. And finally, we need even more infrastructure investment that we received in last year's historic legislations. Cities are highly efficient users of government investments in housing, transportation, and environmental improvements. And we need the jobs that pay and provided through this important infrastructure investment. Public safety, childcare, infrastructure, this is how we create safer, more prosperous cities as we recover. This is how we bring our country back. That's being radically practical. That's what I campaigned on, and that's what I'm going to deliver for New Yorkers. As you all know, being a mayor is hands-on work. You have to meet people where they are. You can't pretend it's someone else's job. And that's what's so great about being a mayor in this city and country. We can make a difference globally, locally, personally. As my administration gets underway, I look forward to getting to know many of you better. I know we can work together on solutions for our big urban challenges. Let's share our creative inspiration and reality-based solution. Let's move forward into a future where we can combine the latest in technology with the social innovations that people are yearning for. Let's pull together, let's plan together, let's lead this nation by example. We can be radically practical. Nowhere else on the globe is America's dream attached to his name. There's no German dream, there's no French dream, there's no Polish dream, but damn it, there's an American dream. And too many people are living in the nightmare. On this day, my colleagues across the country, let's make sure that alarm clocks rings throughout our communities and allow everyone to enjoy this beauty we call the American dream. I appreciate you, I love you, and I thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor. The next person that we will welcome to the stage is a longtime supporter of America's mayors. There are many things I could thank our guests for, but let me just say this: $65.1 billion for all American cities. This is like GoDaddy, it bears repeating. $65.1 billion for all cities to help with COVID relief and economic recovery. It is a fact, an indisputable fact, that this historic aid to cities would not have been possible without her leadership. When the CARES Act was approved in 2020, it only directly funded cities of 500,000 population or above. We knew that was not even close to good enough. And our next guest immediately put forward legislation to provide funding for every American city. I know you felt it. Something that has never been done before. Because of her leadership, cities of all sizes now have the resources through the American Rescue Plan to address the ongoing health pandemic and foster a more equitable and transformative economic recovery that will benefit the most impacted by the pandemic and those who have been historically underinvested in for decades. So it is an honor to welcome back to our United States Conference of Mayors, our friend and longtime champion, the Honorable Nancy Pelosi, Speaker of the United States House of Representatives.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mayor Suarez of Miami, for your kind and generous introduction. I wish you much success as you begin your new term as President of the U.S. Conference of Mayors. As Speaker of the House, it is my great honor to bring greetings from the Congress to America's mayors for your 90th winter meeting. It's a special privilege to join today's program alongside Secretary Mayorkas and the newly elected Mayor of New York, Mayor Adams. Isn't it exciting to have a new mayor in the midst? All of the mayors here, though, all of the mayors here, I thank you for your strong, steadfast leadership over the last 2 years on the front lines of the pandemic. Our nation remains in awe of how you all turned the anguish in our communities into action to save lives. While she could not be with us today, I'm proud of Mayor San Francisco, London Breed, for her remarkable work to keep our city safe. And to all of you, we need to work together to continue to battle the virus. How wonderful it is that we can safely gather for this meeting in person. And that's thanks to the leadership of your CEO and my friend of many years, Tom Cochran, and the terrific work of the entire conference team. Thank you to the staff. Thank you. Today, I come here officially on behalf of the House of Representatives, a body that boasts more than 30 former mayors in our ranks. I also come here personally as the proud sister and daughter of two mayors of Baltimore, Thomas D'Alessandro Jr., Thomas D'Alessandro III. So I have seen firsthand how your success is the foundation of America's success. With no buffer between you and your communities, you have the intimate understanding of the problems people face, hearing their concerns, whether in the grocery store or attending church services. Many people know who the President of the United States is, and the only other public official they know is who is the mayor of their city. Nothing in between. So you're the one they turn to. In doing so, you are the stewards of the hopes of our families, the talents of our workers, and the dreams of our children. Indeed, it is a testament to the experience and expertise of America's mayors that President Biden chose 4 former mayors to serve in his cabinet. Secretary Marcia Fudge, Secretary Marty Walsh, Secretary Tom Vilsack, Secretary Pete Buttigieg. And another former mayor, Mitchell Andrew of New Orleans, he's leading in bringing the benefits of our bipartisan infrastructure law to communities across the country. And by communities, I mean cities and towns across the country. Today, we mark a proud anniversary. 1 year ago today, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris were sworn in as President and Vice President of the United States. Since that historic day, we have seen one of the most impactful first years of a presidency in modern times. In modern times. Getting shots in the arms of millions of people, putting money in pockets, delivering the best year of job creation on record. Working together, President Biden and the Democratic Congress, working with all of you, built a strong foundation for much of this progress with our American Rescue Plan. And it is my privilege to bring you the immense gratitude of our House Democratic Caucus for your committed partnership in helping enact this life-saving, law-changing bill, which Change Relief delivered directly to you. Now, I was telling Tom Cochran and other mayors backstage that when we were doing the bill the first time last year, the year before, 19 and 20, and so when we're doing 20, the first bill, the senators would say, well, we've been governors and we think this should go through the states. Really? Well, we've been mayors and we think it should go through the cities. Thank you for your advocacy. Thank you for your advocacy, because we can maneuver all we want and can in the Congress, but without the mobilization outside, it's very hard to do the very best job. Indeed, working closely with America's mayors, we fought for and won, as was mentioned by Mayor Suarez, $65.1 billion exclusively for America's cities. $65.1 billion for America's cities is really a good applause line, I'll admit that. As you know, this was historic. For the first time ever, we delivered individual allocations to every city in the nation, from the coastland to the heartland, from the largest metropolitan area to the smallest town. And we ensured more flexibility, because you know best how to support your first responders, your transportation workers, your teachers, your food workers, and the rest, the people who make our society function. These initiatives have paved the way, again, to shots in the arm for over 200 million Americans, fewer families on the streets with rental and homelessness assistance, and we have to do more, support for schools to get children learning, parents earning, and more. Meanwhile, this law put nearly $1 trillion, over and above what we talked about, $1 trillion directly in people's pockets through direct payments, enhanced unemployment insurance, and the Biden Child Tax Credit, which has lifted millions of children out of poverty. As Congress remains laser-focused on crushing this virus, we remain committed to working with you to support your efforts and our communities. Thank you for your leadership again. In November, the Congress took another step to power our strong economic recovery with a bipartisan infrastructure law, which will rebuild our nation's infrastructure as we transform our middle class. As you see every day, decades of underinvestment have left our roads and bridges crumbling, ports and airports languishing, public transit and broadband lacking, water systems and power grids behind the times. Imagine we weren't getting the let out for our children to drink water. With this new law, we will create millions of good-paying jobs, I say union jobs, with the largest investment. Think of this, the largest investment in passenger rail since the creation of Amtrak. The largest investment in bridges since the interstate highway system. The largest investment in public transit ever. Ever. As well, again, as clean water for our children, getting the lead out, broadband across the country, and much more. We want a lot of that broadband money that goes to the states to come to the communities as well. So let's work together to make sure that happens. For our cities, the funding will also help keep families safe with our Safe Streets for All initiative. And it will advance President Biden's focus on promoting equity by reconnecting communities harmed by infrastructure projects in the past that divided community. The investment will create good-paying jobs in your communities with turbocharging Americans' competitiveness, boosting small businesses, cutting commutes, and helping ease supply chain bottlenecks. This law is already delivering for the American people. In recent weeks, the administration has announced new funding to improve airports across the nation, to rebuild and repair bridges, including off-system bridges, and to, again, I keep talking about it, getting the lead out of the water systems, especially in underserved communities. As we implement the infrastructure legislation, Democrats remain hard at work to build back better than it was before the virus even struck. We are committed to passing legislation to bring down everyday costs burdening working families, from health care to child care to family care and more. We must also work together to combat the urgent climate threat, which is already impacting cities across the country. How many times have I been here when I have thanked you, mayors, for your innovative initiatives over the years to protect the planet? The mayors have been in the lead in America on this subject, especially at the national level when we have been in denial. Not we, somebody. This will make an immediate and enormous difference to Americans, this initiative to save the planet. So Democrats cannot stop fighting to build back better. We hope it can all be bipartisan. That would be our goal. But we cannot, as the president said, he said, I want to do everything I can to work in a bipartisan way to build the infrastructure where we can find our common ground working together. But I cannot confine my vision for America to just that. We must build back better. Our work doesn't end just what I talked about. We must also carry on the fight to build a stronger, more inclusive democracy where every voice is heard. Last week, as you may know, the House passed the Freedom to Vote John R. Lewis Act to stop voter suppression and election subversion, end partisan gerrymandering, empower the grassroots, and end dark money in our politics. While Republicans in the Senate blocked the bill yesterday, Democrats will never relent in our fight for our democracy, and we will find a path forward. Nothing less is at stake than our democracy. As President Kennedy so rightly observed, we will neglect our cities to our peril. For in neglecting them, we neglect the nation. That is why, for 9 decades, America's mayors and the United States Congress have worked together to forge progress for the American people. So as we face the many challenges and opportunities ahead, let us continue to strive, working together to advance opportunity for every American in every zip code, to strengthen our democracy from city halls to Capitol Hill, and build a better, brighter future for generations to come. Because we know in Congress, we know what you know. To get the job done, listen to our mayors. Thank you, mayors, for all that you do. God bless you. God bless America. Thank you for the opportunity to be with you today. Thank you all so much. Thank you.
I want to thank Speaker Pelosi for being with us this afternoon, and now the session is concluded. Thank you, guys.